A very good afternoon to you all, and thank you very much for joining us here on Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV, streaming on YouTube. My name is Judith Atim, I'm your host, and today we're discussing recent allegations by President Museveni that the National Unity Platform Party rigged elections in 2021 by about 1 million votes. Plus, we shall also be looking in depth at the proposed electoral reforms by the Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Honorable Norbert Mao. My guests I have from my extreme left, retired Major Awich Pollar, Director for External Relations at the National Ruling Movement, National Resistance Movement Party, that is. Major, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Thank you, viewers.
Also, next to Major Awich is Dr. Sarah Bireete, Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. She has been away for the last 4 weeks, and we're very happy and excited to have you here, Sarah. You're welcome.
Is it 4 weeks?
4 weeks, almost, yes.
Yeah, glad to be back on the Citizens Chat Show, my favorite talk show. And good afternoon, viewers.
Thank you, Sarah. And to my immediate left is Mr. Joseph Othieno, political commentator and UPC Ideologue. Good afternoon, Joseph, and welcome to the show.
It's an absolute pleasure being here, and it's a pleasure always to be here on these Friday days, but much more exciting if and when I'm flanked by the two of you. But no, fantastic to have Sarah back. We missed her, but also fantastic to be having her leading us in this conversation, particularly on constitutional reform, in the area of our expertise and her day-to-day livelihood.
Okay.
Of course, Comrade Awich, my brother, is slightly farther away from me today, but it's all in peace.
Okay.
But I'm near the So the Berantare spirit moves on.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. So let's start off by these proposed reforms that the Minister of Justice, Norbert Mao, has talked about. Well, he's presented a raft of proposed reforms, but one of those that I think has got a lot of people talking is the proposal that Parliament should elect the President and not the citizens, exercising their right to vote. Of course, the other proposal is the reintroduction of term limits, the introduction of electronic voting systems to ensure there's transparency and fairness in elections. Let us start with that, and then I'll come back and give us a background to the incident where the president accused NUP of rigging elections. Now, when you look at these reforms that Mao is proposing, a few weeks ago, we also saw Mityana MP Lumu coming up with also a number of proposals, but his was targeting the LOP. Specifically, when you look at Mao's proposals, what's your reading of this? Looking at the timing especially, we're going into elections. We have a president who is 80 years old, and people are wondering, is he contesting or not? We have a son of the president showing interest in running for the presidency at some point in time. We don't know if he will throw his hat in the ring in 2026. So this definitely have implications, very, very serious implications. I will start with you, Sarah, since you've been away for some time.
Well, the history of constitutional amendments in Uganda since the enactment of the 1995 Constitution that will soon make 29 years, we have pending proposals from the Sempewa Commission. The Professor Sempewa Commission did consult widely for the amendment of the Constitution in 2005. And many of those views of citizens were not considered. We also have the Compact on Free and Fair Elections, the major consultative process by CSOs and political parties on what needs to change, both in the Constitution and the electoral laws, to enable Ugandans to have a free and fair, credible election as envisaged in the 1995 Constitution. The Supreme Court in the Amama Mbaba's petition in 2016 also came up with 8 directives for amending the Constitution and the electoral laws to create space for a credible, free and fair election. We have also seen private members' efforts, MPs, trying to amend the constitution, and notably the Nwagaba bill that was seeking to introduce a panel of speakers, but also reintroduce term limits and create reforms for public vetting of you know, like judges and the electoral commission officials, like Mao is proposing again. So Honorable Mao says he has compiled all these reforms from citizens and several processes, and he's ready to table them as a Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, both in cabinet and in parliament for enactment. The disappointment, though, and I know Mao describes himself as an outsider inside cabinet. The disappointment is having a Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs coming to speak to the people about reforms without consulting cabinet. A cabinet minister should not issue an individual opinion. He should speak a cabinet opinion because cabinet is bound by collective responsibility. So we are dealing with individual reforms suggested by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, and we are not dealing with a cabinet position on reforms. Key among these reforms is a shifting to have a president elected by MPs. MPs are the most distrusted public officials in Uganda today, both by the manner through which they are elected, but also by conduct once they get into parliament. And I don't think Ugandans would have trust in this parliament changing a political system. But what kind of political system? Because the parliamentary system has several forms and shapes. What kind of parliamentary system are we proposing? For example, we have the Westminster parliamentary system, where you have a prime minister as a leader of a majority party leading government. And you have parliament that can be dismissed through a vote of no confidence. This system exists in UK, Canada, India, New Zealand, and Australia. You have a second form of a consensus or consociational parliamentary system, where there is a power sharing for broad representation. This is usually common in countries with societal divisions like Belgium. If you have an extremely divided society, like we see the rise of the far right in Europe, then also governments form coalitions or proportional representation to be able to have consensus or a minimum political consensus to make the country governable. Example of this is Switzerland. It is not so common. And the third form of parliamentary system is the parliamentary republic, where you have a head of state that is separate from a head of government, and the president has limited powers, with the prime minister being answerable to parliament. This can be found in Germany, Italy, Greece, and Portugal. We also have a hybrid, like the South African example, a parliamentary republic system, where the president is the head of state and head of government, but you have a bicameral parliament with the National Assembly and the Provisional Council, or the lower house, in several provinces. So the proposal by Honorable Mao seems to suggest we shall have proportional representation. But does that take us then to a divided society where you need proportional representation for a minimum political agenda? Is Uganda that divided or polarized between two sides? And what are these sides? So Ugandans might need to debate that in detail to sieve out what would be suitable. But also then are Ugandans giving away their power to elect the president in adult suffrage, like we see in Article 167 and 103 of the Constitution? And is there consensus for that? The second proposal is a return of two-term limit, I think, which is, first of all, they shouldn't have been removed in the first place. So that's just to rectify an error that was made to benefit one individual, and it should be done. And then the introduction of two terms for affirmative action seats. That I find also problematic, because youth do not need these two terms. By the time a youth MP finishes the term, they are usually above 31.
35, yeah.
We haven't seen any youth who is eligible to represent young people for two terms.
That's at 18.
I know, but I mean the practicability of it is that we have not seen. You see, a legal reform should be enacted to cure a lacuna. We have not seen any youth qualifying to be re-elected as a youth MP, whether youth starts at an 18 or not. So what lacuna are you curing that doesn't exist? Because that's the principle of legal amendment. You have a law, and there is a problem that now requires amendment to be cured so that the law is better. That's the spirit of reforming laws. We also have a dimension of one of the affirmative action groups that is a state institution. Very problematic how the army becomes a special interest group. The army is a national institution, is part of cabinet, is under the Minister of Defense. And we have a whole structure governing UPDF that is paid through taxpayers' money. How the army became a special interest group, the argument in favor of this was rooted in our turbulent history, and how the army had been a disruptor of democracy, either as government soldiers or as rebels. So these are men in uniform. When they are fighting to take power, they are rebels. Once they take power, they become armed officers and everybody is saluting. In our turbulent history, they have been a disruptor of democracy in Uganda. So some of the framers of the Constitution thought that bringing them on table would help them understand and follow the politics and stop disrupting our democracy. In the UPDF Act, enacted in 1995, the UPDF are defined as listening posts, and they were sent to Parliament as listening posts, meaning that they should not engage in political arguments. That was the spirit. Under the movement system, they carried that spirit of a listening post. And one would have assumed that when we changed the political system to multi-party, then automatically the army should have been pulled out of a political partisan arena, because the Constitution, under Article 208, describes the character of the army as national, non-political, and non-partisan. So when you pick this army as defined in the Constitution and place it in a multi-party partisan arena called the multi-party parliament, where you have two sides, the majority side and the minority side, where does the army sit? Where does it fall? And even when the minority side is not fully occupied, the army squeezes itself on the majority side, taking a partisan stand, even in parliament. You would have said that there are free seats on this side. Maybe the army should have sat there. But where do they sit? With NRM. And this makes them a military wing of the NRM party. They cease to be the character of the army, defined under Article 208 of the Constitution. And I think it's high time we pulled out to the army, if they are the character as envisaged in the Constitution. And then if they are not that character, then we should know that we don't have a national army. The other important proposals that Honorable Mao, as I conclude, tables is the open vetting of judges, ministers, electoral commission officials, among others. But you will see that most of these proposals, there is also a proposal for digitalization of elections. Most of these proposals do not address the immediate needs of a credible, transparent, free and fair election. Why do I say so? What is the elephant in the room in our elections? The security forces and their disruption during campaigns, during voting. The security forces are always on rampage, causing violence, and in a partisan manner, intentionally disrupting the activities of the political opposition in this country, including arrests, killings like we saw in 2020, campaigns, ballot stuffing, like we must receive the clips of ballot stuffing by the army. And I was revisiting the interview shared by one of the former ministers, Honorable Kavasi, when she addressed Al Jazeera with evidence of pre-ticked ballots, and all of them for President Museveni. I've just shared it on my X. All of it, of pre-ticked ballots in favor of President Museveni in that interview. And I know that will relate to the debate we shall follow on with who rigs elections in this country. So when you have proposals that are not aimed at addressing this, and it's important to note that in the Supreme Court recommendations, 8 of the recommendations, out of those 8, 6 have been implemented in terms of enactment of reforms. And we have 2 pending recommendations. One is a clear punishment for public officials who engage in partisan politics, not yet recommended, re-implemented, and a legal framework for use of technology in our elections, not yet implemented 80 years down the road.
Can you mention the other 6? If you have.
The other 6 include extension of time within which to file a petition, that led to adjustment of our voting timelines that were enacted alongside Mage's bill, because some of the recommendations were picked to escort and sanitize the Mage's bill for removal of age limit. The other proposals were in regard to the announcement and transmission of the, I will get them in the second segment, the 8 recommendations, announcement and transmission of elections to increase their transparency. But the 2, punishment of public officials, there was also a recommendation on use of state resources and free coverage of media, where the Supreme Court recommended that, for example, platforms like UPC, if they don't give equal coverage to all contenders, then the people personally in charge of UPC should be punished in their individual capacities. So I will get a whole raft of the 8 Supreme Court recommendations in a short while. So when you have these 2 pending, and then our other disruptor is lack of regulation for campaign financing in our elections that we need to fix, but also a transparent national tally center to ensure that we have a transparent way of transmission, tabulation, and announcement of presidential elections in this country. In my view, these are the important reforms that we need to be able to have a credible, free and fair election in this country. I submit.
Thank you very much, Sarah. But I haven't heard your thoughts about the proposal for also women representatives to have only 2 terms. You talked about. Oh, you mentioned. Oh, okay. Affirmative action. Yes. Okay. So let me hear from you, Major, what your thoughts are in regards to these proposed reforms.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Sarah, for the opening remark. It guides the direction of the debate. But I had had this debate with my Congress brother somewhere. And I think Sarah now comes clear. The other time when I said you thought I was joking, I had said the difference between Mao the man and Mao the minister. I told you that because if you see now, you hear the use of Mao's proposal. Mao compiled, that he proposed, he compiled. In other words, he has not reached any forum. So if we're basing on Mao's thinking, we're more or less discussing his thinking or a rumor. Because Mao has made it clear that while he's a minister in the cabinet, he's at liberty to think freely. So unless it comes on the cabinet and it becomes a cabinet document which is being discussed, I can't own it, or even nobody can own it. And I'd say that. So are we talking, we are now talking about what Mao thinks. So it is not yet on, or it was not a proposal from cabinet and gave him a go-away to. That one I'm not sure. It is his thinking which has been with on the street. So, and especially when he makes it clear that he's free to talk his mind, then I find it, is it a proposal by him? Is it a compilation? At what point does it become government-owned ideas? And now that he publicly makes a difference between him and government and the immunity in which he was given to act freely, meaning to talk like opposition, then how do we get him? Now, so it is difficult to separate Mao the man and Mao the minister. In this respect also, I would like to comment about the role of the ruling party in this, because I would have known. Because the 5 years that we have as a mandate holder is that whatever ideally should be taking place in cabinet, it should emanate from what we promised the people. We could say we promised in areas that at least I know we are aware about is the area that the Supreme Court recommended, which ideally we have taken 6, as Sarah says. And President Museveni is talking clearly about the machine voting. So, if it is true that the 5 years mandate, whatever is coming from cabinet should be from the party, then how comes we're not aware about this reform? Even in America, to go to cabinet, the Republican Party should take a position, even the Democrat, because a Democratic Party in America or a Republican Party in America would just go to legislate or implement what the party has decided. Why is it the party? Because the party promised the people. The promise in the manifesto is a broad promise. Congressman is an expert in party management. He should know this better than me. The party promises people during election a broad promise that if you elect us, we shall do this in the 5 years. But the party doesn't do it directly. The party now does it through organs like cabinet, which government it forms after election. But we are not aware about this. In any case, if it goes, if Mao smuggles it in his wisdom to shortcut, we are the ruling party. We have the majority. We have a chief whip. Remember that NRM parliamentary organ, caucus, is an organ of the party, like NRM Women League, NRM Youth League, NRM Disability League, NRM whatever. NRM parliamentary caucus is our organ under our party constitution, and that's why we have a chief whip. Suppose now we deploy our chief whip to whip our members not to vote for it. Where will it go? It won't. So, I therefore wonder where it is coming from that the party even doesn't know. All the party knows for now is that the party is committed to implementing the Supreme Court review, which is done nearly, and part of it which the president has been talking, my party chairman has been talking about the machine voting. The other thing I want to talk about is if we now face the proposals as it is, let it be Mao's dreams, whatever it is. If it is really Mao's proposal, then we shall face it, we shall cross the bridge when we reach it. The merits and the demerits of having the UPDF, the proportional representation, the indirect or direct, those are debates we shall have. For example, some people are urging Article 1 says power belongs to the people. Does it therefore mean that the people must vote their president if you want to say power belongs to the people?
or you think by the people electing a representative to vote for them, that is also power belonging to them. So that would equally mean that the people could vote an MP, which MP could vote a select committee, which select committee can vote the president. So you could have as well end up with the 20 people voting the president. And the argument will be that, yes, you voted these people, you delegated them. So does people having the power means people delegating their power to a group of people, and that would mean the same. That would be the area to debate. So if Mao's proposal became government ideas or government paper, then we shall close the bridge and we'll reach. Now, my last comment is the Supreme Court, as I go back to it. The Supreme Court is just argumenting, is the argumentation of the legal provisions, because a law once passed, even if it is an act of parliament, it only tests its lifestyle by actively court argumentation. And it is through court processes that you actually find there's a gap or there's no gap, or there's something which is wrong and which needs to be cured, in which case you have either a lacuna or you have a mischief. The intended amendment is going to have. So it is good and beautiful that we put our constitution to test, both in practice, in implementing what the constitution says, but also in court arguments. Because in court arguments, you nearly have three legal brains arguing with their independence. You have the plaintiff and the defendant, then the judges. So all these three brains at the highest level help us to test the law as it is. Was it lawful? Is it good? Does it serve a purpose? Is there a gap? Is there a mischief, to do new mischief arising which lacks a law to be addressed? It's good. So it's fine and perfect for Supreme Court to do that. That is how we develop our law. Not only do we develop by enacting, but we develop by testing it in the fire of judicial process.
Thank you, Major. When you were talking about the difference between Mao the man and Mao the minister, I was reflecting on the cooperation agreement that Mao signed with the government in July 2022. And I was wondering if perhaps somewhere in that agreement, Mao has leeway to do what he is doing right now.
No, I think the cooperation agreement, remember one time Mao alleged that the cooperation agreement wanted him to do this and that, and the president said no, it isn't there. Okay?
Do you have a copy?
Yes, I think it is somewhere. So you remember, but if you envisage a cooperation agreement, the cooperation agreement is basically between the two parties. How do we work? Fine, you could be gearing towards that. But the agreement will come in not antagonizing each other. Please don't antagonize us. Let's work together. We shall give you representation. We shall give you posts to vacancies. This will be a minister. We send one to East African Parliament. That is what is in the agreement. Those were the terms only. But it does not change the fact that once you're in cabinet, you work, as Sarah says, in collective responsibility of cabinet. It doesn't bend the rule of cabinet. That I will be in cabinet and therefore I'm free to do what I want. No. The agreement is just about your working relationship, not to antagonize, not to abuse each other. Your working relation of giving you opportunities like job placement, if there was any payment to be made, which I think is not there. But it does not say you will therefore work outside the cabinet rule. You join cabinet and look by cabinet rules and regulations.
Thank you. Let's hear from you, Joseph.
You know, I was thinking as Comrade Awich was submitting, and what struck me is that actually the very fantastic argument Comrade Awich seems to make falls back onto the burden of the mess in which we are as a country. Comrade Awich, you actually shot your own political organization on the spot. Whereas you're absolutely right that how governments work, governing political parties, that you should normally, ideally, as governments, be implementing your manifesto commitments. And in any case, whereas I have actually suggested on this platform that these conversations should not be taking place today, that these are conversations that should have started 3 years ago, or if they're taking place today, there will be debates we'll be having across political parties where the NRA, in this case, will perhaps Norbert Mao and his DP, are saying that, look, in the event that we're next elected at the next elections, these are the reforms that we propose to make. And that these conversations take place and they're tested through the ballot. And that when political parties are elected, they're elected on the merits of those. And in many cases, actually, smaller political parties, maybe even with the 5 percentage points, would normally, up to the end of the elections, actually gain up to 2. And a political party with a 5 percentage point, gaining, say, 2% at an election is actually huge, you know. And it would be simply because maybe the leader is a young new Sarah Bireete. She's coming to big thing to reform parliament and reform government, and I like her position on equality issues. I like her position on the proposal on constitutional amendments. Possibly I like her position on the environment, and perhaps she carries a huge swift of young voters, and that voice becomes so loud, leading to elections and during elections and post-election, that the governing then political party, even if they had run against, they realized that, come to think about it, actually, the proposal by Sarah that we thought we were dismissing, you know, really lost us votes. Maybe we lost 5% as a result of this. And so maybe we should begin softening up conversations on this. So generally that. But then number 2, that as it may then, is that how we end up here is quite clearly part of the debate that we've had, including while Sarah was away, that the timing of this conversation is very suspect. And that's coming really on the eve of the elections, and we're not even sure which of these reforms, even if we all agree that they're needed, and even if there are consensus in government, how many of them are able to be carried. But I'll still go back to this. How the Democratic Party, the second oldest political party, and NRM, the longest ruling political organization, make an agreement, come to an agreement, and they form a mini coalition. And in that coalition, the leader of the Democratic Party is the one talking, and he's got a particularly important position of constitutional reform. And we're discussing constitutional reform. And Comrade Awich is saying that, well, that is Mao the man. It really can't be. If it is Mao the man, then I think the person on the spot here should be Mr. Museveni. I think Madam Presenter hinted at it. What was the part of the deal? You know, is it the case that Mr. Museveni had a discussion with Norbert Mao without the approval or directive of the political party, political organization is representing? Was it his deal? Was it about an NRM deal? Or was it a governing deal? A deal for his political organization? If it is, then that tells you the mess in which we are as a country. I'll tell you that at independence, when UPC won the elections at independence in 1962, Sarah, as it happened, regardless of what the then leader of UPC's position was, he had to be mandated, and he states very clearly that I was mandated by the central executive of UPC to go and have a conversation with the 2 other parties, DP and KY, that we should form a government of national unity, you know. So the proposal was go and discuss with them. So they were authorized. He was authorized by the political party. So from that perspective, you're right. Not an individual thing. Now, if it was part of his own initiative that he feels that they needed to have a government of national unity, again, you go to the authorizing body, in this case, the central executive of the party, and say, look, this is what we want to do. This is what I suggest. Get the approval, and then you go and do it. Now, that happened when DP refused. KY agreed, we ended up with a coalition government. But it was quite clearly an understanding. Now, the second element of that, when KY is coming, when you're coming in as a part of a coalition team, and that happens world over, it does not actually matter the constitutional arrangements, including perhaps a presidential system in America where the Republicans or perhaps the Democrats pick one particular individual. The particular individual from the Democratic Party joining the Republican government will say, look, these are my areas of interest. Mr. President, maybe you'll slow down on this. You must perhaps stop funding or supporting Hamas or supporting Israel, or you may actually have to raise the budget on the environment. There is always a semblance of agreement of one way in another. Now, for Norbert Mao to come, and it is Mao the individual versus Mr. Museveni the individual, and not NRM. No wonder we actually in this kind of confusion. But in any case, I think it really doesn't matter. What matters to me is we saw in the 60s a situation in which we had to change the constitution, the 1967 constitution. Was that a lacuna, or was this a situation in which you simply said that, look, the idea that we had a president who's a rotational president, is a monarch, and it's not working, we abolished that, and then we created a presidency, in this case elected by parliament. That happened. My worry is, when this new constitution came up, we seem to have been wanting to cure we seem to have been wanting to cure the symptoms rather than dealing with the underlying issues. I don't really think we sufficiently test our constitutions, because I think there is somebody in a particular debate somewhere else who was saying that, look, we seem to be dealing with a country in which we have bad losers and bad winners. People win in this case. A president governs, does not govern for the people. We have a situation in which the army is playing around with the rule of law, the police is playing around with the rule of law, and simply say, oh, we should go ahead and change the constitution. But by and large, it possibly would not necessarily even matter whether we have a presidential parliamentary system, simply because we have a system where after 40 years it's not working, and I think the incumbents are basically trying to solve their own interests, and people are beginning to say, maybe if we change the constitution, then maybe we would be able to look at and do things slightly differently. I think my next submission will possibly be a bit longer, but let me leave it at that.
Thank you. I am particularly concerned about the proposal on Parliament deciding who leads the country, and I think that is a contentious piece of legislation if it gets to that point. History has shown us in Uganda that if the powers that be want a certain law amended, no matter how controversial, no matter how unpopular it is among the public, it will sail through. If it so happens that the powers that be are interested in having this particular proposal go through, we definitely know how that will end. If it happens to go through, what would the implications be to us?
Well, let me first state that the spirit of the Constitution, and it's the only thing that came out in the age limit petition, was a confirmation that some of the provisions of the Constitution, if altered, they would change the meaning of the Constitution. So we had a change on the major political amendments in the Constitution. They've been to removal of term limits and removal of age limit. And unfortunately, in 2005, we had only one citizen out of the 30 million plus that would have been affected if term limits were never removed. And in 2017, same story. Only one citizen out of the approximately 40 million Ugandans would have been affected.
What?
By a clause. Yes.
Age limit?
Yes. You will come in as usual. You are disputing. You'll submit
Thank
after.
you.
Yeah, you will submit after.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in 2005, only one Ugandan had served 2 terms, presidential terms, under the 1995 Constitution. And therefore, only President Museveni would have been affected if term limits were not removed. Come 2017, President Museveni was approaching 75 years. And was interested in the presidency. And if Ejim was not removed, only him would have been affected, because we have not had any contender for the presidency that is aged above 75 years. As we go towards, I want to make it harder for my entire guy to by making a proper legal case. When we come to the third major proposal, to say MPs can elect a president, unfortunately, it comes at a time when citizens have no trust in Parliament, when the conduct of Parliament is so much wanting that they would attract zero trust, even if a referendum was run today. I think if you asked citizens out there whether they have trust in Parliament or not, you wouldn't go beyond 1% if you are lucky. So in the eyes of the people, unfortunately, if you ask them which institution of government is most redundant, Parliament would feature highly. So is this an institution that you would trust to elect an individual that is going to enjoy 46 articles in the Constitution giving him power? An individual that can determine matters of life and death, because we still have a death sentence in the Constitution that is only signed by the president. An individual that determines matters of borrowing and use of taxpayers' money, everybody's money, because we have direct and indirect taxes. Previously, we had a situation where those who are 18 years would pay tax. But today, even if a child buys a sweet, they are paying indirect tax. So literally, every Ugandan is a taxpayer. That you are a custodian, and I saw a story in Daily Monitor recently that all Ugandan money is my money. That, of course, the statement is
Actually,
wrong.
I thought that was a joke.
No, it is. That's my money, my oil, that you are all this, and you are elected by this parliament that has zero trust in the people. It's not possible. Also, the final remark that I will make, and where I was yesterday with the Honorable Mao, the proponent of this amendment, and to give a little credit to Mao, as much as Cabinet has not adopted these recommendations, Honorable Mao is the minister in charge of constitutional affairs.
Yes.
So whether there is personal proposals or not, he holds a public docket as a person in charge of constitutional matters in the country.
I think it was very definitive, actually.
But
That's the other day,
also the supervisor of electoral matters by virtue of his position. So he can recommend to Parliament, to Cabinet, whether the several agencies adopt or not. He's the line minister for this. So we have a situation. Just last week, my neighbor here, they were in birthday celebrations all over the country. Their leader was official age is, I think, now 80.
Dear leader.
Yes. The party leader of the NRM is 80 years. This comes at the backdrop where the president's agent in the US, Joe Biden, was told that he's too old to contest.
At 79.
Yes. So the citizens are suspicious that maybe we are going to have a third major amendment in terms of the political structure of the Constitution, altering the basic structure of the Constitution, also to benefit one same individual that could be affected. And that would be very unfortunate. Because we are not here to legislate for one individual, but for the people of Uganda. So this is the political implications of these amendments. And my view is that we don't need them. We need a political transition. Once we transit and find it necessary to alter the basic structure of the Constitution, let it happen in the transition.
Thank you, Sarah. Let me hear from you, Major, if you have views in line with her thinking, or views that contradict what she's saying?
I have my thoughts here. First, I'd like to comment to maybe re-emphasize the thoughts of Mao. You see why we can even think that we differentiate between what Mao says and what government says is that we have it on record that Mao cited a provision in the agreement. And the president came and said, no, it is not. What if he has a proposal? And the government said, no, that's not what we are thinking.
But it's
Okay.
part of government.
Yes, but we said, no, it is not what we are thinking. Even when he said the other one, it was part of the agreement. It was actually, it was a bilateral agreement between the two, and he was a minister. They said, no, what you're talking is not what we want, or it's not what is true.
Bireete, if you don't mind, just briefly. So, what specifically are these proposals that Mao is putting on the table, which, in your personal opinion, you do not agree, one, but two, in the opinion of your political organization as a party, would you find contrary to
No,
the
but
position?
Sarah listed them. Sarah listed
No,
them.
but
Things
because
like
to be
indirect
fair,
election. Let me answer you.
Yeah.
Indirect election, the presence of UPDF, proportional representation, machine voting. Those are the list. But I said machine voting, we are aware, but the rest don't. Because suppose we wake up and said we are okay with the legal regime. Suppose we said we are okay with the legal regime. Where is this voice of amendment coming from? Okay? But I also insisted that if we had thought as a party of a strong request or urge for an amendment, we should have already marketed it in our manifesto. That, you know, these 5 years, citizens, if you elect us, we have issues with the Constitution. We propose to you, should you vote us in power, we shall make constitutional amendment. And I don't seem to keep it apart from addressing the Supreme Court position. It's not there. And therefore, this materializes finally to what cabinet captures. So ideally, it's not individual thinking. Even if you were the Minister of Agriculture, it is not your individual thinking to say as minister, I want to propose this. It must have been in what we propose to people in the manifesto, that when you vote for us, this is area we'll do in agriculture. So it's not just a minister
Major.
waking up and saying, well, you know, I am the Minister of Agriculture, I am doing this.
Major, on just similar to what Joseph is raising, when age limits, when the debate on age limit happened, we did not hear the ruling party say much. It did not present its position either for or against. And if it knew this was something that is against the Constitution, I assume a responsible party would have said, we do not endorse that. But the fact that it went through, and remember, NRM has the numerical strength, so if it benefits the party, actually the leader of the party, then it is okay. Our concern here is with the proposal to have Parliament elect the president. Would the NRM think this is a good proposal? We've seen them endorse age limit before. We've seen them embrace term limits before, whereas they were silent at the initial conversations. But
First
they embraced
about
it.
the age limit debate, which you say it was not a party position or party resolution. Precisely, that is why it came as a private member's bill. That is why it came as a private member's bill. But this one of Mao is coming as a cabinet position. So a cabinet position has that genesis that I'm telling you, that even if you're a Minister of Agriculture, it must have started way back. For example, recently a Minister of Agriculture wanted to get $350 million for some loan. A discussion was called in the Prime Minister's office. They said, no, getting this loan, you can't get it until the party approves it, because the party cannot be making promise to people over the 5 years on something, and then you come to government, you are borrowing loan for something else. It doesn't match. So good enough in that meeting, I represented the Secretary General, and I was asked, government is doing this. Is it in line with what you promised? Can you put it can you look through your manifesto and find it? So therefore, a private member's bill of Magezi
is precisely different from a cabinet position or intending to do something. They are two different things. Then the other bit of the question I will answer. But I wanted to say this, that clear, that this is what now brings the difference between Mao the minister and Mao the man. For me, if Mao table and became a cabinet position, I will come here and defend it. I will forget that it came from Mao. I will forget that it came from Mao, as long as it is now a cabinet position. The other thing I wanted to Congressman, it was a slip of a tongue, I think. He said the president doesn't govern for the people, maybe in another country. But in Uganda, President Museveni governs for the people. For the people. So I think it was a slip of the tongue. So it's better, because I'm keenly listening to you. So President Museveni governs for the people.
It's on the record.
Now, your gist of the question is, what if the proposal goes through?
I'm not their servant. I'm not your servant.
What if the proposal goes through? This is an hypothetical position. If the proposal goes through and becomes part of the law, it will be implemented. That is one of it. And either it will work. Remember, a law should govern a society in a way that it would propel production in the country, in subconscious way, production and wealth. A law will bring law and order in society. Holistically, a good law will bring peace. And actually, a good law will bring long life expectancy. So if it goes through and it is good, this will be the effect. On the other hand, and in that case, we shall say, those who were opposed to it, for example, in the course of the debate, because it will be debated on merit, then even those who are opposed, for example, for direct election, will say, I think my colleagues had wisdom, because now see the result. They'll sit back and say, I think these guys had a point. I had rejected. If it goes bad, it will definitely, of course, have impact on the society. It will impede production, it will bring instability, it will bring lack of peace, it will even reduce life expectancy. So it is very easy to answer a question of what if it goes through. If it goes through, it will completely have its effect on the holistic society. And that is why you have you feel a bad and a good law. So if it goes through and it doesn't work well, then those who are opposed to it will say, we want you. We want you. Maybe the fallback will be that we live in a dynamic society. So laws come and go. Then it will be amended at that point again. So it's simple to answer, what if it goes through?
Okay.
Finally, I have something.
Please, please proceed.
Sarah talks of only one person would have been affected by the age limit.
And term limit.
No, term limit, I'm not going for it. I'm single out age limit. Sarah, where I live, I have very many old people who want.
Are they
to
contesting for president?
They wanted.
Have they contested?
No, not they contested.
It was
but
lifted.
they wanted.
It was lifted. What stopped them?
They wanted.
I want to, in where you come from, there are old people who wanted to contest for the presidency.
I don't take alcohol. Judith, I don't take alcohol, but I go to bars. I don't take alcohol, but I go to bars. But in the bar, I sit. People, there are many people who are above 75.
What stopped them? It was lifted. It was lifted.
If you think it was only for President Museveni, my dear, where I sit, there are many.
My brother, I feel they are
Now, finally, birthday celebration. Finally, birthday celebration. I want to take this opportunity to, of course, express my happiness on the 80th birthday of the president. The president looks young and strong. And you know, the effect of age on us depends on many factors. The food you eat, the environment you grew up in, the exercises you have been exposed to, and also some other factors that has really affected you. So the age limit of 80 may act differently from person X and act different from person Y. And that's why you still see President Museveni at 80, he can still make 50 press-ups, while President Biden cannot make 2. So the age limit acts differently on people. There are many factors that build up to make an effect of an aged person. So I'm so happy that my party chairman is 80, but is strong and every day gets more wisdom.
Thank you, Major. We actually have 4 minutes before we finish this session, so I'll give you 2
I wanted to ask quickly, if you may allow me. I found out which 2 issues. One, you say that there are these old people who wanted to contest for president.
That's breaking news.
The law was lifted. What stopped them? The second question, quick one, I want to have. I agree that our president is generally
Younger than his age.
No. He's not, there's nobody who's younger than his age. You are your age. Everybody is their age. Yeah, my question is the matters happening in the country? We see his children fighting on Twitter to inherit his seat, which is a public seat. Do you think he's in charge of even of his family?
You will answer that when we return. I wanted you to just make a quick reaction for 2 minutes, and then we take a break.
I think if we're closing, then I'll be quite happy to let it close. But simply to say that, look, I'm still just concerned that Comrade Awich is confining us to the specifics around the processes rather than the merits of the issue. The question is, the issues that Norbert Mao raised 2 days ago, and I watched bits of the clip the other day, was quite clearly the case that he talks about matters that arose out of court. Sarah was very elaborate about this. Matters that came from the Constitutional Review Commissions, some of the issues that have been raised by political parties, some of the issues that have been raised by civil society organizations, some of the issues which are very commonsensical, including the question of the presence of NRA guys in the assembly, the role of the NRA guys in the elections, and et al. You don't have to wait for specific conversation or perhaps agreement that Norbert Mao made with Museveni, in any case made with Museveni, without direct approval and apparent consultation by the NRA secretary. I think, to me, those are divergent. In any case, after the break, I'll be quite content to be able to give you some of my own quick thoughts on the specifics on this matter.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. We'll be back after the break. This is still the Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. I'm Judith Atim. See you shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break, and thank you very much for keeping it with us here on Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. My name is Judith Atim. Once again, we are talking about the proposed electoral reforms by the Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs. We've actually discussed a range of those, and also shortly we shall be going into the other topic, which is the allegations by the president of the National Unity Platform Party rigged elections in 2021. Now, before we went to the break, Dr. Sarah had posed a question to you, Major, about the fight that we keep on seeing playing out within the first family. You have the first son constantly attacking his brother-in-law and saying all kinds of things. It's just not, it's generally not a pleasant situation that's playing out before our eyes, but it is definitely one that leaves us as citizens very, very concerned about what's happening. How do you respond to the questions she has presented?
You edited Sarah's question. I know Sarah's question, but what
Please repeat.
Sarah's question, in principle, was questioning if President Museveni is in charge, and the family was just part of the elements that she thought
Can I
shows
rephrase?
a lack of.
Can I
So
rephrase
was
my question?
I was going to answer
No,
you.
can I repeat my
Let's
question?
repeat.
My-
I
Want
think
to
I've-
change it?
No, I'm not going to change anything. I asked two questions.
From
One
Bunyanje, you know?
is that you said there were other elderly people.
Yes, that is. This
No,
one
no,
is
I
A.
just for the
Yeah,
record.
this
Let
is
me
it.
repeat that two questions.
This is A.
Yes.
And this is B.
Let me just repeat. There were elderly people who wanted to contest. It wasn't only Museveni affected by age limit. What happened to these people? How come we never saw them contest?
Yes.
The second question is, President Museveni at 80, strong, he is his age, seemingly healthy. What are his children fighting for on Twitter? Have they turned the presidency into something to inherit and bequeath?
You have introduced the third question.
No, it was exactly like that.
Anyway, but why I went in for that question was because it came directly. But as you can see, my A was why didn't they stand?
Yes.
That was, so I had not forgotten your question. Then B was, is he in charge?
He's in charge.
Yes, sir.
What is his family fighting for?
I start with the first question. You know, the first question, the amendment of age limit was both bottom and top. The limit cutoff for the age was also there, setting the age below which you can't be a president. I think it was 35. That was also open to say an adult of sound mind. Then the other one was the on top, the 75. So you would have expected that after opening from the bottom and the top, many candidates came in to join in, both young and old. But as I told you, before that, I had many the people who were showing interest in the presidential, and they were all. But partly why, or reason why they didn't come up to stand, is that after a second thought, they found their interests are covered in the candidature of Museveni. So they therefore did not see any reason to stand. So these people who wanted to stand, that I met, later on, after thinking, they found that, well, since President Museveni is a candidate, then their issues are covered. And precisely that is why they didn't stand. The other thing is the in-chargeness, or the in charge of Museveni. I can say without fear of contradiction that President Museveni is very much in charge. I already mentioned in passing that there are factors that affect the age, and therefore somebody in America can be at the same age as somebody in Uganda or even in London, but the age reacts on them differently. So we are lucky in our case of the revolutionary President Museveni that is strong and is in charge. For example, President Museveni as Commander-in-Chief has details to follow deployment of troops everywhere and is in charge of command. President Museveni can chair 20 meetings in a day, time allowing. And these are critical meetings where he has to listen to every speaker and take correct decisions. President Museveni can fly long distance where he needs to. President Museveni does exercises. So, in cabinet chairing, he can chair cabinet. In ordinary thinking and paperwork, some of us write letters to him. He replies you within a very short time and precise writing. Therefore, he's very much in charge. On the aspect of the family, as you know, it is a family. So you wouldn't expect my comments so much into a family matter. Some people choose, but first of all, a family like any other unit is bound to have contradiction. You have contradiction everywhere, even in marriages. So a family is a unit, is the first unit so it can have. So how he manages his family, or how they are grown up and how they talk, I don't think it is within my limit to comment about family management. But on matters of state, on matters of competency, is very competent. And therefore, the freedom with which his children or relatives have uttered their views
cannot in any way be used to judge his assertion or his in-chargeness, and yet we're seeing him in charge of state matters. So I am kind of limited in my comment about detailed matters of the management of a family.
Let me hear from you, Judith.
You know, very sadly, Mr. Museveni shocked the world, and he was actually telling an international television network that he works for himself, he works for his children, and works for his grandchildren. Completely undiplomatic, completely confidential, completely illegally, and in any case, in the unlikely event that he was a it would be completely anti-revolutionary. He did. And so Ugandans have got every reason and every right to be extremely suspicious about Mr. Museveni. And then to go ahead and link it up with the fact that Mr. Museveni's family is so openly, so formally, so fundamentally intertwined with the governance of this country, to the extent that extraordinarily the entirety of this region, possibly the history of this country, his wife is a rotational cabinet minister. His son is now top army commander, having commanded key positions of the military. His brother is a permanent, almost effectively president, number 2. His son-in-law is possibly almost sort of the chief economic advisor. And this with absolute respect, because as you know, I've rarely combined it in this way. And you can go to his daughters, and you can go to his other brothers, and you can hear the stories of people, including parastate organizations, who are so intertwined as close relatives of this various family. So, no, it's not surprising, therefore, that as we're discussing constitutional reform, and during Greg's era, and Julie, and indeed Comrade Awich, many of the comments that have been coming from people as part of the, particularly this element of the presidency being elected by Parliament. The biggest sense of feeling that I said much earlier is that the sense of reason sort of goes on. The citizens are simply just concerned that they're seeing all these constitutional amendments linked to nothing about the country, nothing about the future, nothing very directly apparent about a lacuna, but very much about sorting out the interest of Mr. Museveni. So in any case, I think, like Sarah said, that particularly because of the manner in which the citizens at the moment view the National Assembly almost as a property or a directive equivalent to, if you like, the wing of the presidency, that it's possibly not surprising that in the event that the constitution will change, because this is the context of the conversation we're bringing Mr. Museveni's family, that it will be basically a push to serve his interest, possibly a push to serve an interest of either his son or his son-in-law, perhaps might surprise us with maybe even a daughter-in-law or an extended cousin of his taking the position. So basically, that's really the spirit. But I just want to say this, that unfortunately, the history that our country's had, we always talk about turbulent history, but forget about our turbulent realities. The earliest back was the conversation around the major constitutional amendments era was 1967, where the presidency, was married with that of the prime minister. And then, as I said, it was to address a major contradiction of time in the 1962 and 66 constitution, in which we had amendment from 1963 when we had an amendment to replace the Governor General with a titular president, and the titular president was to come from the existing constitutional or existing monarchies to the traditional leaders of various spaces, and that it would be rotation. It didn't work, meaning obviously whatever the merits and demerits, it didn't work. So that happened. Fast forward really to the 1980s, the system that we had, in a very interesting way, sort of seemingly worked for us at the time, Sarah, in the sense that that you went for parliamentary elections, the leading political party basically formed government, and the leader of the party becomes the president, and the leader of the primary opposition becomes leader of opposition. That, in a very strange way, is not even what is being suggested at the moment. It's being suggested the president must be elected by parliament. So the system that we had before would have been closer to the Westminster system, except the difference is that the Westminster system has, the prime minister who still answers to the king,
The ceremony of
ceremony in that sense. But by and large, basically, overall that. I think this is a conversation, and I know we possibly don't have the time for it. It's a conversation that has to continue. It's a conversation that has to continue in political parties, conversation that has to continue in the country. My genuine concern is that, unfortunately, I think, as Judith suggested, the worry is that there are things happening in such a manner that there is no smoke without fire. Whatever the opinion we might have about Norbert Mao is pushing a specific agenda. He's a minister of cabinet, and he's basically pushing an agenda that, whether we like it or not, something may be happening. And since we're going towards elections, my worry is that we're not dealing with the biggest issue about maybe the role of the army, the issue of the electoral violence, the issues of some of the changes that would otherwise be much more interesting, meaning the affirmative action positions, the position of special interest groups. And then wider, for me, as I say, this is more, I don't know whether it's part of that will be constitutional reform. This question that I've always talked about, that what happens to people who get involved in election violence? What happens to people who basically, I think election financing, I think Sarah saw it another debate the other time we talked about it. Some of those key issues. These are urgent, important things, and I think we shouldn't push them away. Whether or not they are the kind of reforms that can take place quickly enough for us to realize in the next 12 months, leading to the next elections at the end of that. But the national important conversation that must take place. My quick worry to conclude this is that I don't really see anything majorly changing in this country unless and until Comrade Museveni retires and we go to a new leadership. I have suggested elsewhere that NRA has got leaders, even if, in this case, the UPC became the third largest political party. My aspiration is to make it the second largest political party, and in fact, become the governing political party soon. But in the event, unlikely event that no other political party comes to government, Mr. Museveni should retire. We should go through a transition arrangement. There are eminent leaders like Comrade Awich within NRA who can actually lead that process so that we get a transition, so that we have a genuine national conversation that would see us, realizing a genuine democracy after a very long time.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And that leads us to the next conversation we are getting into. And just a bit of background. Last week, there was a Thanksgiving service for the late General Aronda Nyakairima, the former CDF and former Minister for Internal Affairs. So the president made these allegations against NUP that this party rigged the 2021 general elections by 1 million votes. And he actually said the vote rigging was facilitated by electoral agents at polling stations who did not properly oversee the election process. And then he went back to history, saying our election problems did not start today. They go as far back as the 1960s when the Uganda People's Congress was at the center of alleged election rigging. Let's just reflect on these allegations for a minute, and then Sarah, I think I'll get back to. I'll start with you again. Earlier, you posed the question: who rigs elections in this country? And I remember I think the day after these allegations by the president, I think Twitter was awash with all kinds of videos and accounts of election rigging, accounts of brutality that people witnessed or experienced at different times during elections in the past. Your thoughts, Sarah, or your reactions?
We have had a lot of actions as a country that are in contempt of our democracy and sovereignty. Because elections by nature are the foundation of society. And when you disrupt elections, you disrupt sovereignty of the people. The simple definition of democracy is that democracy is the government of the people, for the people and by the people. I think it's the most powerful definition of democracy. We have had instances where election results are contested. And I want to refer to 3 instances that are documented after the enactment of the 1995 Constitution. We have had 3 presidential petitions. In all the 3 presidential petitions, the Supreme Court has ruled that there are irregularities in our elections, that our elections fall short of the minimum standard provided in the Constitution. And also most of them have condemned Electoral Commission and other state agencies. This is documented evidence in court. I have never, in these petitions where President Museveni is a permanent feature and defendant, I have never seen the NRM produce counter arguments of where opposition has rigged in these petitions. This is a document of court. President Museveni has been alleging that opposition rigs elections. And I want to refer to the RC elections by lining up in Kampala that were very violent, and why NRM has failed to win support in Kampala. Since its early days, it's because the opposition are more informed and they block attempts to rig. Even in the lining up exercise, there were attempts to rig in Kampala. There were skirmishes of violence because of attempted rigging in Kampala. And if you talk to the groups then, the DP, especially UID, stopped rigging in those elections of lining up in Kampala. And UID was not NRM. Today I don't know. That's why I changed from is to was. Yeah. So let me now wear my hat as an election observer. What do we see in the field? Common is what Engineer Chugundu did. Deny Greater Kampala an opportunity to vote. They could not deliver materials until 4 p.m., even in their backyard. 4 p.m., materials that they should, where voting should have started by 7 a.m. Even by 4 p.m., they had intentionally denied Kampala Metropolitan an opportunity to vote. Who rigged that election? Rigging takes several forms. You rig by either omission or commission. A decision to deny people an opportunity to vote in Greater Kampala in 2016 was rigging by NRM. When you go to instances, I have been a candidate once in a parliamentary election. An election where Honorable Okrutu was elected MP for Bushenyi. We all suspected what NRM does best and decided that by the time they open polls, all candidates should go and witness the poll, the box opening
of the ballot
boxes at the station of a candidate President Museveni supports. And we went to that polling station. Engineer Chugundu was in Bushenyi as the chair of the Electoral Commission. All the women in the parliamentary candidates, we were at that station in Katungu, Bushenyi Town Council. They opened ballot boxes and they were full. Even the first voter had nowhere.
Full, what do you mean?
Stuffed, pre-ticked, stuffed, full. Even the first voter in the line had nowhere, had no space to cast their vote. I was a candidate in that election. I left Bushenyi, I drove back to Kampala without voting. Because what the nature of election was that.
So you behave like Olaro Tuno.
Can you wait? You will have your time. You did vote. The NRM cadre discipline has gone through the window. When evidence is stapled, the discipline goes through the window. So I was a candidate. I saw this with my naked eyes. The president had camped in Bushenyi. They had deployed the military. I was a young person, youth. They had deployed the military. We were under movement system. It was not multi-party.
That's correct.
I saw this. Who rigged that election? Come 2011, 2016, 2021, I have acted as an election observer. What do we document? What do we see? Why are election observers harassed and arrested during elections? Because we are documenting the conduct of the army, ballot staffing, the conduct of the electoral officials, changing declaration forms. In 2016, there was a house in Kololo that was sending results to Electoral Commission to announce. In 2016, the polling agents of FDC, of Mama Mbabazi, were in Nambole, waiting to witness as results come in. They saw nothing. The agent of Mama Mbabazi is captured on media, saying, I've been seated here for 6 hours. There is nothing. We are seeing the screens of computers are empty. We don't know where these guys are getting results from. There's nothing happening at the 30th. They left. The house in Nambole where the road mayor, the Asul Kwagu, and Dr. Kiza Besigye went. Transferring elections via to the website of the Electoral Commission. In 2011, it is alleged that a fax from Karamoja carrying allegedly election results was faxed from business center at Sheraton. In 2021, who were the major occupants of the National Tally Center? The army. You can check the pictures. The videos are still online. They can't be deleted. Internet never forgets.
I think one thing you've not mentioned, there are also allegations or reports of vote staffing in barracks.
Yes.
Military places where civilians do not have access. I think.
No, the military, by the way, we don't have documentation
of what happens in there.
Military, no. Yeah. Even some are won by Besigye. So it's these soldiers who go outside. Yeah, so in Nambole, who are the major occupants at the National Tally Center? The army, the police, prisons. 90% of occupants at the National Tally Center are these groups. You can think it is a coup or something. If the security forces wanted to secure a National Tally Center, they should be meters away. They should leave that National Tally Center for campaign agents, for local and international observers, for the diplomatic community. They can secure the national. They don't need to occupy the front seats and all the seats of the National Tally Center. To secure a National Tally Center, what are they looking at? It's intimidation of electoral officials. The journalists in the last elections, they asked Justice Byabakama, where are you getting the results you are reading? It's a video online. Where are you getting the results they are reading? Justice Byabakama turns and says, looks at the secretary, you mean you people are not displaying? And the screens are empty. Where were the results coming from? How come people can never see these results like we witness in other countries? Who rigs elections in this country? There is a Daily Monitor article still on the internet. Electoral Commission posted a wrong result. And that same result from Kampala, NUP had a declaration form. When they said this is wrong, Electoral Commission writes EC mark, watermark, fake result, and then they said we made a mistake. Where did they get that fake result? Where? What was the source of that fake result? It is still a story in the Monitor, on the line. Where did it come from? Last year, as I conclude, the former minister, Honorable Joy Kavasi, in 2016 gave an interview to Al Jazeera. It is still online, displaying all political ballots in the name of President Museveni. All of them. Does opposition rig from 7? I end my submission, please.
Thank you very much. Should we hear from Major? Then we come to you about, we go back to 1960, if you don't mind.
Why don't you want to hear from the Congress?
We shall hear from the Congress.
I think the gist of your question was the comment from the President about NUP.
Yes.
That was the gist of your comment, and I will try to deal with it. But about NRM being cheated and NRM being meted violence on, these are true facts. We are the victims. We are not the perpetuators. I deal briefly with violence, because they go hand in hand. Violence, you saw one time, there was a video which really was online about a lady in yellow who passed somewhere and she was stripped naked just because she was putting on yellow. You assault the dignity of a woman, you tear her clothes, you make her naked just because she's wearing yellow. We have never had any of a NUP lady. Sarah is in her red, she can walk confidently everywhere.
But when there's police in town, people also get brutalized for wearing red, even when they don't identify with NUP or any other party.
So I've made that comment. Two, to prove that NRM is a victim in violence than NUP, I can do this with the Congress now. I have yellow T-shirt in my car and yellow NRM caps. We can look around. We get a NUP T-shirt and cap. You put on the NUP, put on the NRM, I put on yellow. We walk in one gear.
You want to wear yellow?
No.
Red.
I'm saying, and I've told this to a NUP friend, I said, if you think we are the perpetuator, can I give you my NRM uniform? Can you give me your NUP? Can we walk in one again? And we see who will be attacked first. He feared because he knew his hooligans would attack him, mistaking him to be NRM. But the NUP will walk freely. This is the truth. So we are victims, colleagues. We are not perpetuator. Anybody try to do that, you put on NRM and walk. The NUP man will walk with his red and kofia comfortably. It is not until the silent NRM in shops in Wandegea will come up to say, why are you attacking? Is when you will know they are NRM. But they are there, they are quiet, not attacking. So we are victims even in violence. Now come to election. Somebody will ask that, why didn't NRM go to court? Okay? This is simply because the findings came much later. Typical of Museveni's methods of work, he didn't hurry to it. But he composed a professional system to check what happened. And he did it professional work slowly. So by that time, all processes had gone. Besides, we had won. So what ground would you use? That unless you want to go like in court, where a judge has convicted somebody to 10 years, but the prosecution is saying, no, I'm appealing. Why? I wanted 20 years. You are appealing because the duration set is little. So unless we are going to court to say, you have declared little percentage, the point is we had won. So what was the point of going to say, we go to court?
To point out an irregularity,
So,
wouldn't that be...
So this has happened.
For extension of time.
So this has happened and we are victims. So in all cases, in both violence and election cheating, we are victims. Any NUP who does that, I give him NRM attire. Let him walk in one again. Or even in Tinder. We are victims in violence. We are not perpetrators, and we are victims in election in cheating.
Even in my area, for example, which is UPC dominated, the congressman is here. The truth is, the intimidation are meted on NRM than UPC. UPC does it. It's your party.
We don't.
In fact, extend it to even Congress, even local governments, which in your UPC dominated areas. I can assure you, NRM don't even win contracts. So, in most cases, NRM tend to take up a back seat in as far as violence is concerned and election cheating. The difference that people keep saying is the state apparatus. But the state apparatus is a state organ. They can speak for themselves. But for us as a party, as an organ, who would be interested in cheating, who would be interested in beating people so that we win support? Zero. So let the state agency, if you talk of police, you talk of the army, they can talk for themselves. Or, if you want, in my opinion, we can address it. But in as far as rigging, and that is what President Museveni said about the NUP thing. A study, a survey was commissioned and it proved. There was remember that in the wave area completely intimidated NRM people and NRM agents. This is why there was a lot of loophole that led to this. So I think I've done with the thing itself. Now, the other comment I wanted to say is, Sarah says the courts have said it falls short, or short, and then, no. I don't remember that kind of ruling, Sarah. What I know is that the court said there was irregularities, and you can't rule it. It's a big mass of organization. It's difficult to be perfect. The court said there was a irregularity, but the court added that it was not substantial enough to change the results. So I wonder where you are getting the false shorting from. It says there was irregularities, but it did not. It wasn't. If there was if President Museveni say won by 1 million, over 1 million, or 1 million, and then the irregularities was 200,000. So the court is saying it wasn't substantial. So I want to get clarity on where you're getting your falling short from.
Falling short in terms of quality and the integrity, I think that's what she meant.
Yes, but in all, the court says the elections had irregularities, noted. But the same court said, and people even went into detail on the principle of substantiality. What does it amount to be substantial? So many theories and brains debated the principle of substantiality.
Is 1 million
So
substantial?
it was decided that, true, unfortunately, there was malpractice. But the malpractice wasn't substantial to change the result. Now, finally, Sarah makes claims on many other issues which, like non-display, which could be really technical error, like posting a wrong result, which can be a technical error.
There's a whole
Like
roadmap and
which
enough time
cannot
and
be
money
binding.
invested in
But
this.
in all
this
the
process.
claims that Sarah says are so particular that you would want to hear the person who handled say his version of the story. But to listen to Sarah's version, we can't get sufficient facts to make a conclusive discussion on it. Because, for example, if you ask the non-display, the person who was there, it will come out cleanly and explain to you what happened. But now we are hearing from my Guarantare owner. If you ask the person about posting a wrong result, the person who was there, the technical person, he would explain to you smartly. Now we are hearing from our Guarantare. So I propose that matters that need more facts
So
should not be discussed.
next time we
But you
should bring.
see-
Okay, just a minute, briefly. I think a fellow land friend saying, I don't remember this judgment. Supreme Court election petition judgments are available online. For that matter, all judgments from a record, the High Court and above, are available online, including some from some chief magistrates. are up online. So the judgments are available, you can read. But just 2 pieces of information. In by-elections in Oyam, there are 2 stories online, and this is a record monitor, daily monitor. Soldiers with pre-ticked NRM ballot papers beat up presiding officer. Polling in Oyam by-election has been disrupted by a vote stuffing incident by armed people believed to be supporters of NRM candidate, and I know later Tango Doi said some people picked things from the NRM secretariat, and nobody refuted this. In the similar incident in Kayunga, we came here at around 6 a.m. and found ballot boxes with pre-ticked papers. We even found one person still pre-ticking, all in favor of an NRM candidate. Oyam again, same story. 250 pre-ticked people driving in a police van raided one global polling station, Otwal sub-county in Oyam districts, and ticked 250 ballot papers at gunpoint. We still remember the videos of pre-ticked ballots by soldiers in East Soroti, despite a by-election. Like, really? Can anybody come here and say these things do not exist?
Surely. Lucadia.
Sure.
The judgments are on record. You can refresh your mind by reading through.
Thank you. Let's hear from you, Joseph.
You know, every time I beg that we shall have, as a country, an opportunity to have a fresh start, we get major setbacks. As recent as last week, I was praying that as Mr. Museveni turns 80, he should give us a breaking news of sorts, that one, that you guys have been serving you guys and have been sacrificing since 1965. I don't know how old he was in 1965. Some of these are contradictions. But
65, for your information, he was in senior 5 in Ntare school. He was in the great Ntare school in 65.
So
senior 5.
How old was he?
I can cross-check.
Yeah, anyway. So this guy has been, sacrificing since 1965. And so at 80, he could simply say that, look, I have children, I've got grandchildren, I've got cadres, I've got the witches whom I've moved with. I trained many young, promising, decent people. Somebody like Comrade Awich is a decent, eminent global lawyer, a tested fighter. And these people can pick up the torch and run with, And so I've left NRA and this country in a very good state. And so I want to go and very soon begin to look and play football with my grandchildren, because I'm a fitness enthusiast, and to look after my cows. It did not happen. Instead, this guy comes to prick a nonsensical old story about the excuses they used for brutalizing our people in Luwero, and that is this nonsense about rigged elections. It is Mr. Museveni who claims that rigged elections allegedly took him to Luwero. The person who rigged him in those elections, the person who won the elections in Mr. Museveni's seat, is his brother-in-law, Sam Kutesa, with whom they've enjoyed the national economy, the national politics, and the, if you like, the monopoly of political, military, and economic power in this country. Sam Kutesa of DP, not UPC. UPC came second in that election. Mr. Museveni says people should go to court. For him, he didn't go to court. He didn't go to court because he had no basis, had no foundation in 1980. But to go back to 1960, it was vague. Which 1960 election is Mr. Museveni contesting? In 1962, or which one? In any case, as I said, in 1980, Mr. Museveni has been in power for 40 years. I've argued, including these programs. Neither NRA nor DP have ever been able to come with credible evidence, and this Mr. Comrade Awich normally likes to say that, look, he who alleges and should prove. NRA and DP have never provided evidence that UPC rigged the 1980 general elections, nor, as I said, the 60s one I'm hearing as a surprise. I just want to say that I was shocked, bringing it back to the much more substantive issue, which is about NUP. I think it was actually an insult to NUP, particularly the fact that many NUP youngsters died in the 2021 election violence, to suggest that basically, instead of again around birthday time when you reach 80, you should begin to talk like a grandfather. You should be talking about civility. You should be trying to talk about bringing people together rather than actually breaking old wounds. So instead of saying that, well, at 80, I'm going to make sure that people who come after me are able to do things so that elections that take place in strongholds of opposition, people are not beaten up. Instead, these new people rigged me and 1 million votes. 1 million votes is so many votes, man. So many that regardless of the question of substantiality that Comrade Awich talks about, you can't just let it go like that. And I think Mr. Museveni should really be tested, by I saw a note by Chagulanyi Robert that Mr. Museveni should be compelled to prove these crude allegations of his, particularly if these crude allegations of his are intended to massage the fact that nearly 100 people died in the 2021 elections. The election, Sarah, that will say, and so many still being held in military places. And I've said, Sarah and I actually, I would not want to say this, Sarah and I, there was a particular program in which, global television network in which Sarah and I were supposed to have appeared, and we didn't. At the time I was in Nagongera. And a colleague, a producer of a global media network, told me worryingly, they sort of had to let go. Sarah, these are things that we sometimes just let go. It was such a scary moment, and as I said, our international community friends couldn't believe the manner in which the 2021 elections took place. But with Mr. Museveni in charge politically, Mr. Museveni in charge militarily, Mr. Museveni in charge in every aspect, and those kind of comic experiences that Sami Mbakama and team had, it's just comic that Mr. Museveni should have raised that at his birthday thing at 80, when he should be actually singing and dancing for people, but rather maybe putting a punch, adding salt to injury. In this case to NUP, I don't understand what message he was trying to give to the youth of this country and to his grandchildren and to the future of this country post his age at 80. Bringing UPC, as I said, it surprised me because these days I thought he would not have brought in UPC with it. But today I don't want to punch him. But
which UPC? Maybe some bit of information.
Sure. Yes, sorry. Yes.
One, on the allegation of President Museveni, who is in charge of elections in this country? You have the Electoral Commission, you have the police supposed to guard elections. When you say 1 million elections were rigged,
1 million votes.
Votes were rigged in Uganda. Where were the election officials? Why did President Museveni reappoint the same officials that rigged 1 million votes? Two, on the issue of timing and whether President Museveni should get away with this.
Okay, interesting questions. Earlier, Major was talking about an in-depth survey that was done, a study, something scientific that was done that unearthed the extent to which the rigging took place. So I don't know if you could share. I think if we understand a little bit more of what that study was, perhaps you could get some answers to
But who is responsible? Who is responsible? Who were the officials of the elections in those regions? Have they left office? Can they be dragged to police for failing to do their work? You know, this is a careless allegation that should not be made to go scot-free when we are preparing one way to nomination of MPs.
And in any case, if you don't know, just for 30 seconds, the point that Sarah raises, which really links very important for Comrade, which is the timing. The timing, and many people have had this conversation, and I really wanted to go into that. But could it be that Comrade Museveni, at his 80, instead of retiring, is still looking into the future to protect his own things, but particularly trying to say that come 2026, 2025, starting next year, we are coming for you guys. We are coming for you guys. So basically preparing grounds
for another rigging.
For another rigging, but this time much more organized, so he's able to say that, look, don't forget NUP got 5 million votes the other day, today they've got 3, but remember, last time actually they've sunk by 1 million. The other one was basically our votes.
On the question of rigging, Major, well, I would like you to share with us still findings from that study. I mean, if you could answer some of the questions through that. But before you do that, I know we were talking about rigging in respect to NUP in the 2021 elections. But I would like us to go a little further, like Sarah had earlier said, 2016, 2011. NUP was nowhere in the picture. you say the brutality is actually on the side of NUP supporters. I don't know, before NUP came, what was your experience with the FDC? It was FDC at that time, because I remember many times I would be on Kampala Road and this police just comes and start firing tear gas, and if you're wearing blue, you're a subject of attack. Now it has changed. If you're in red, like you say, civilians attack you, and then when you're but it also depends on the situations and the context. What was the experience in terms of civilians showing hostility to NRM before NUP came into existence?
The experience in the past has nearly been the same, although during NUP it nearly took a radical approach. True to it, NRM has been a victim. NRM has been disciplined among their members, or among our members.
Even during FDC times?
Even during FDC, I need to recollect to get the specific incidences, because these are many years back, but all I know is that the victim-perpetuator relationship existed even in FDC. As for specific facts to illustrate, like I illustrated this with a woman putting on a yellow dress, even the police, if you want, I didn't want to talk about a police because it's a state organ, but there was a policeman in Kiseka where they nailed a long nail in his head with a hammer, and he died. So that one is for another thing. But to be brief to your question is that the experience is nearly the same, although the degree varies, because the NUP one nearly took a radical approach, more detailed and more violent and more prevalent, but it has nearly been the same. And therefore, because of the longevity of the history, I can't pick specific instances to illustrate.
But also, there has been this question that by the president coming out and saying the elections were rigged, does that imply that he himself does not have faith or trust in the electoral process and, let's say, even the electoral commission or whoever is in charge of running elections itself?
Of course, the president could have his views about the competency of the commission, but also the president knows that even with the competency or lack of it, the forces, especially during or in the wave region, it was so, the discipline was manifested to the extent that it would even affect the competence of the Electoral Commission. You never can tell, or I could say part of the research was a revelation from the election officers themselves on how they were overpowered or how they came on them. So in this case, if an election officer came and tell you, look, I was in this station and this is what happened, I was overpowered or something happened, then you wouldn't really say it is incompetency. And also in regard to this, you see the way President Museveni does these things. Even if the competency or the loyalty of the Election Commission was questioned, is the type of a leader who would give you the benefit of the doubt. He would discuss with you in a closed meeting if need be, but he will give you a second chance. So it wouldn't, but these are Ugandans, so it wouldn't be necessarily a penalty to throw them out or to arrest all of them, to do, especially when you know that the influence came from the other opposing forces. You can take a few, in any case, new members were appointed, but the few old ones remain. So you give them a chance.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes to go, so I'll just split 2.5 minutes for each of you, Sarah and
Just a few things for the benefit of the viewers. I just want to read a few headlines that show. It's very surprising for our comrade Awich to put it to be victims of violence and rigging in Uganda's elections. 3rd July 2020, 4 shot dead at Besje meeting. 4 people were shot dead at Bulange Mengo, seat of Buganda Kingdom, disrupting a visit by a Forum for Democratic Change leader. Opposition rally turns bloody. 6 February 2006. 2 people have died when a soldier opened fire into a crowd at an opposition gathering in Ugandan capital Kampala. Bloody incidents that stained past polls. The matter was never followed up. Rukunjiri shooting in early March after Besigye had held a rally in Rukunjiri town, 2020. These are some of the incidences where that happen in elections, where if the NRM claims to be victim in courts. Just as I conclude, for me, President Museveni's allegation of vote rigging has 2 dire implications. One is a vote of no confidence in the Electoral Commission and the elections in this country. And unfortunately, it's only President Museveni with the power to appoint or disappoint the people rigging our elections and shortchanging voters in elections. If 1 million votes were rigged, where are the election officials in these polling stations? Can you parade them for the citizens to see? Can they leave office so that they stop shortchanging the will of the people as who should govern them? The second dire implication, President Museveni has indirectly declared his so-called victory and tenure illegitimate. Because if you are in an election where you, as a commander-in-chief, fountain of honor, commander of all security forces, incumbent, can be rigged by 1 million votes, to what extent were the other people rigged? And how legitimate is your claim to power? So consequently, President Museveni is declaring himself an illegitimate leader of this country. Very unfortunate.
Thank you.
That's a very, very powerful submission. Very powerful submission indeed, as a conclusion from Sarah. And I think it's up to Ugandans to watch and make their own considered conclusion. I know Comrade Awich was disappointed that he did not have opportunity to close because of time, but then is part of his protest.
But I'm talking after you.
Part of his protest is allegedly that that newspaper publications are not admissible in court. But I mean, this is no court.
But they have details. This is a talk show.
This is a court of public opinion.
These are newspapers of record.
Indeed.
You can't challenge them if they publish falsehoods.
Indeed, and Comrade Awich and co have made claims and allegations, including of the 60s and the 80s, with no basic evidence at all, witnesses, forged hearsays. But no, as it happens too, that on the Aranda event, I was actually privileged to be asked to make a contribution on the Aranda day, and I thought it was rather strange, but I did by a particular media house, and I did my fair job with it, and I didn't really bring out many other things. But let me say today that actually, as it happens, I've been a parliamentary candidate twice, and both occasions I've been a direct victim of rigging by NRA and a direct victim of rigging and ballot stuffing, including by NRA security services, including by police. And in fact, on both occasions, Aranda coincidentally happened to have been Army commander. And in fact, also at the time, this is something I've not said in recent times, Aranda's names was mentioned as having been present, as part of the military operations, including in Tororo, to check the Buke distribution military operations to influence election results for Comrade Museveni, both for presidential and parliamentary elections. So these things are coming from a rather rich situation. But look, I want to conclude again. We hope that whatever happens, these debates should continue, but young Ugandans should wake up, and young Ugandans, particularly also Ugandans in political spaces, both opposition and in NRA, I think we should be saying that, look, it's a time for us to be able to have a conversation that focuses more beyond Museveni and more towards the future. And as I said, in NRA people should also continue to be having conversations and looking at possibilities of men and women with the capacity to push forward the NRA political organization beyond Mr. Museveni. capable and eminent guys like Awich and many others are there. They should be doing that. And for me, from UPC, I'll be waiting to meet up with them so that we're able to discuss a national consensus, national reconciliation, so that we can make sure that we're able to have a country that caters for all of us, so that these constitutional review issues and others are discussed in an open and fair manner, and a manner in which is not selfless, a manner in which is not partisan, a manner in which is not focused on individuals or groups of individuals, but rather in the interest of our children and children's children.
Thank you, Joseph. Major, let's hear from you in 2 minutes.
2 minutes? One, I made the congressman read my point intentionally to make him know that I had formed opinion before Sarah started citing. Because I didn't want it to look like I had her speak, then I wanted to say that is what I already said. And I did not say admissible in court. I just say inadmissibility. Because newspapers are just, even in any ordinary setting, because those are rumors. Newspapers are rumors.
Those are not rumors.
That is rumors.
That is inaccurate.
And that is why
Unless
in
we're
the
talking
rule,
about tabloid
for
or a
example,
gossip publication, but that's
gossip,
not authentic
because
papers.
even in the rule of parliament, for example, rule of parliament says don't listen from newspapers and bring it to parliament. Rather debate in parliament and newspaper take it out. Similar thing.
So that
Oh my God.
from being rumors.
If it's
When
coming
they
from
report.
parliament
I have
to
done
the
major
public,
scholarly
is it a rumor?
publications
Isn't it a rumor?
Oh my God.
Or is it only a rumor
Mass-
when you are consuming the
Mass
content?
communication is a big.
I am still saying that there is no binding position on whoever is writing his story. It is his story. And if you want to know why it is not binding, the same story can be written by two newspapers, even if they are not government newspapers. They will be totally different. So if you were to believe in these stories, in what you say, what would you say? Two reporters are on the scene. Two reporters report the same event differently. So this is why I desist that what you people hear.
The angle
facts
might be
don't
different, but the
change.
facts cannot change.
So colleagues, please desist from hearing stories. Desist.
We should
And
all
it is not
run to the
admissible,
scene of
not
crime.
even in parliament it is
See for
not
ourselves.
admissible, even in court it is not admissible anywhere. It is not authenticated source of information. Finished.
What is
The other thing I want to say is,
information?
somebody hinted on compelling Museveni over whatever he said. I just wanted to say it is not possible to drag a president in court under our law. In fact, even if the president, for example, had issues with the wife, even the wife can't sue for divorce. Not even that. The best that you could do under legal arrangement in that situation is an agreement, because an agreement is between two parties, what you call a separation agreement. Under no circumstances will you compel a president in court.
So
that one I just
why
want
did
to
the
say.
president say NUP should take him to court after
not
that
joking.
weird allegation?
Of course,
so the whole thing
he
is
would
a joke.
say if you take me to court, you would lose.
The
If
whole
one of
thing
this is
is
a
a joke.
So he was saying, even if you take me to court, you'd suffer from preliminary objection. You'd suffer from
The whole
preliminary
thing
objection.
is a joke.
Now, finally, I want to say, Congress says Sarah's submission was powerful. It is not
Absolutely
powerful.
Huh?
It is not powerful at all. In that,
My opinion.
it is not powerful in that Sarah says, if you go for an election and you say you are cheated and yet you have won, it invalidates you, not at all. For example, in parliamentary elections, even at constituencies, there are some strong candidates who are cheated, but they go ahead and win. On the contrary, to say it invalidates you, it instead shows your strength, that despite you are cheating me, I'm still so popular that I can win. Which has happened at parliamentary level, it has happened at all levels.
I just want one clarity from Major, still in relation to newspapers being peddlers of rumors. If I go to court and I want to change my name, I need a deed poll. Courts normally ask for those deed polls to be published in the papers, right? If I want letters of administration, it has to be
court summons.
gazetted,
Even court summons.
Yes,
are in
and if it
papers.
is not published in the papers, then
It's null and void.
So-
So I want to ask a second question. Allow me time. Afanda, which we are preparing for elections. NRM is still sitting a ruling party in power. These people who rigged 1 million votes, do you want them to remain in office to again rig Ugandans? Why don't you parade them and fire them if you mean business?
I think I answered. I start with that. I answered that already by saying, in the wave area, this survey could have found the Electoral Commissioner's revelation saying how it happened, how they were forced.
By
So
citizens.
in the process, you see
Where
that
was
he's
police?
innocent.
Where was police?
The detail is there. But innocent.
What a
And I already
joke.
told you,
What a joke.
I already told you that President Museveni is not the kind who would rush for blanket penalty or blanket punishment.
He says he
They are
has
simply
evidence.
because this
What
punish
evidence?
He says he
everybody.
has
I had to
evidence.
put this
What a
conversation
joke.
to a
How
stop.
about the other question? I thought there was another question.
It was just that you
What a
saying
joke.
newspapers are
Yes.
fed
Now the
peddlers of
discrepancy
rumors, and
is
yet the courts
yes.
recognize
Let me
them.
answer. You have asked your question. What you are talking here is newspaper stories. The court document that to appear in a newspaper is not a news piece. These are court documents that were authenticated by court. They are just put there for publicity. There are processes to reach there. There are processes. So differentiate between newspaper stories, which is in issue, and the court document that are publicity. Those are two
But
different
then
things.
why would courts allow these documents to be published
Because
in
those are
platforms
two
that carry
different
rumors?
things. Because
These
those
are
two
just
different
double
things.
standards in his
These are two
submission.
different things.
These are
So
double
the
standards.
point is issue is the news stories, which are, and because I gave you examples of two journalists writing the same set of facts, and they write so differently.
Different,
Now, if you are to believe
the
what is
facts,
Different
what they ask is,
analysis,
are the facts
same
different?
facts.
Are the facts different?
So, somebody can be cheated and he can win. What it illustrates is the strength of the candidate. That however much you cheat me, I have still won. It happens in LC1, it happens in LC3, it happens in district, it happens to constituencies that you find a candidate is so popular, they cheat him, but still with cheating him, the candidate wins. It just tells you, I am popular. You cheated me, see where I am.
What?
It happens. It is actually so
My
precise
message
what
is
it is.
Overshot by
simple.
20
Citizens-
minutes, actually.
Citizens, don't listen to these jokes. It's the mandate of electoral officials and they are present at every polling station. These electoral officials have police at every polling station. If NRM and President Museveni say they have evidence, then them show us the police and the electoral officials that aided the rigging of NUP. In the absence of that, dismiss these jokes.
It
Thank
can be
you.
shown.
Thank
It
you
can be
very
shown.
much. Special thanks to Joseph Othieno, Dr.
These
Sam
are
Bireete,
jokes.
retired Major, Awich, Pollar. Thank you very much for your insights and perspectives on today's Citizens Chat Show. We've been talking about the allegations by the president that the NUP rigged elections in 2021 and also analyzing the proposed electoral reforms that have been shared by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Norbert Mao. Thank you very much. We'll be back next Thursday, same time. Do stay with us. You can subscribe. We are on YouTube at Civic Space TV. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.